dukkhapattaca niddukkha, bhayapattaca nibbhaya, sokapattaca nissoka, hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear-struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all beings be. With this metta wish, let us continue morning session. I want to continue my talk on Maha Satipatthana Sutta. This is a very long discourse. We take section by section. Last time we talked on clear comprehension and various minor active postures. We call them Khuddaka Iriyapata, small postures. I do not think I did a complete explanation. Since we are using these as parts of our meditation or for meditation exercise, we use our own body, feelings, mind, mental state, and objects. Now, when we do walk and when we bend, look away, eating, drinking, and so on, I suggested that we must keep the fivefold purpose in our mind. The fivefold purpose, I think you all know. In this practice, one thing we invariably should keep in mind is the notion of I. Bending, standing, walking, eating, and so on. If you remember the various movements we make, then you also make these movements without saying that I move, I stand, I lie down, I eat, and I do, and I. Without using the word I or notion I as something permanently existing. For our conversation purpose, we have to use I, he, she, you, and so on. All these personal pronouns we have to use. But we must understand at the same time what is happening. A great deal of activities arising depending on something and passing away. What depends on is, for instance, when we want to move, intention arises. Whatever the move it may be, walking forward, backward. When we say backward, we don't walk towards the back, looking ahead and walking backward. but we turn around and walk back. Or whatever we do it intentionally. In that intention, as soon as the intention arises, this intention itself generates certain energy. It is called Chitta Kiriya Vayo Dhatu. Chitta Kiriya means the motion created by our intention. And there we need right effort. Fourfold right effort. Generally, we keep paying attention to our breath. As we mentioned many times, the breath is simple, pure and clean. And we choose the breath for that reason. It is pure and clean. In that state, there is no greed, no hatred, no delusion, because the breath is so pure and simple. And when we make effort to turn and arouse this energy, we must remember to prevent any unwholesome, unarisen, unwholesome mental state from arising. What are the unarisen, unwholesome mental states? One is greed. All of a sudden we may remember when we turn, I take turn as one example. There are many hundreds of activities we perform. I take this as one example. So eventually you can apply this to any movement, any movement. So we have intention to move or turn. With that intention, energy arises. That energy also should be very simple, pure and clean, just like our breath, without having any unwholesome mental states. What are the unwholesome mental states? Greed, hatred and delusion. That means a thought arising with greed, intention arising with greed, with hatred, with delusion. If the intention to move is that intention must be pure and simple and clean. And this is a very special, very subtle, skillful effort, because it is possible for us to move with the intention of doing something harm, to getting some greedy state or greedy action, using words full of greed, full of hatred and so on. As greed arises, I use one example for all this. When greed arises, along with greed, suffering arises. That is the dependent origination formula, dependent origination truth. Greed arises, suffering arises. Desire arises, suffering arises. When this arises, this arises. This is a formula. dependent origin and formula. Imas being sati, idang hoti. When greed is, pain is. With the arising of greed, pain arises. When there is no greed, pain doesn't arise. With the cessation of greed, pain ceases. Pain is suffering. Now when we use the word suffering, we don't mean only the physical pain, but it is much deeper experience, suffering, very deep. So we have to have an intention, pure intention and effort, pure effort, and this effort must be an effort to prevent unarisen greed from arising. Effort to prevent unarisen hatred from arising. Effort to prevent unarisen delusion from arising. And then we turn, if the greed with our very good intention not to have greed, if it arises, immediately we stop our movement, our turn, and get rid of that greed. Immediately. That is the second kind of effort to overcome. First effort is to prevent, Sangvara. Second effort is to overcome. Once it is gone, we continue our turn. And then that state is pure, simple, no greed. And we want to maintain that pure, simple, no greed mental state. That is called bhavana. Bhavana. We arouse, the third effort to arouse pure, greed-free, hatred-free, delusion-free mind, state of mind. And keep it, maintain it all the time. And this is mindfulness training. Mindfully we turn, mindfully we become aware of greed, hatred and delusion. Mindfully we become aware that the mind does not have greed, hatred and delusion, and we want to maintain it, and yet when it arises, we want to overcome it. When we overcame that pure mental state is there, we want to maintain that. And therefore these four types of effort must be made when we walk. Very, very subtle, very deep, profound awareness of our own mental states. For instance, when we make a move, as somebody one day asked me, if a bird chirps or dog barks or human voice, and you hear a song, something like that may happen. When, say for instance, a dog bark, your mental state has been very pure and clean. Suddenly if you hear a dog barking, you think, this dog barks this time. Why doesn't he bark some other time? Now I just managed to get rid of my greed. I just managed to have very clear, pure mental state. This dog disturbed it. Why not this owner of this dog put him in a canal? Why doesn't him leash and put him inside the house? Why doesn't he make him quiet? And this man doesn't like me meditating. He simply wants to disturb me. That is why I must call the police or call the pounds and so forth and so on. All kind of other unwholesome mental stain can arise. You are doing something very pure and clean, and you just manage to let go of greed or hatred or delusion and brought your mind to the subject of meditation, your breath, your movement, your experience. You just got it. And that instant this dog barks. So friends, that is the time you have to make the right effort to prevent your having this from having this kind of mental state. You keep very determined. This is called chandang janeti, vayamati, viryang arabati, chittam pagannati padati. So this effort has 5 stages, 5 qualities, 5 steps. What are they? Chandang janeti. You arouse a wish. Chanda means wish, will. You must make a wish that you have to have a pure effort not to have any unwholesome mental state from arising, to prevent it from arising, not to have any mental state. Chandan janeti. Vayamati. Vayama means exercising. Vayama means exercising. You have to exercise your mind. You are not learning this to write on a book and paper or discuss and so forth. You have to put into action. Exercise. Friends, if you don't exercise, it becomes atrophy. It becomes disuse. So your knowledge, it becomes useless, becomes rusty. So you have to put into action. Vayamati. Chandanjaneti vayamati. Viryang arabhati. You start the right effort that very moment with mindfulness in order to prevent all these unnourishing, unwholesome state from arising. You have to have an effort, right effort. Vayamati, viryang arvati, chittam paggannati. Pagganna means holding, making the mind very firm. Then padahati. Pada means making additional effort that even when you are going to lose your effort, your determination, that is the time you have to, without even thinking of life or with even risking everything else, you got to make a firm, final, last effort. So it has qualities of the right effort. So when we walk, when we take one particular action, and pay total attention to it, and whatever unwholesome state arises, you immediately learn to take care of them right then and there. You take certain period of time of the day set aside for this mental exercise. Walking, sitting, standing, lying down, bending, stretching, you select. You select whatever exercise you want to do, you select it and keep the mind totally focused on your activity. And that is what we want to do in the clear comprehension. The comprehension to be clear, we have to remove all these impurities of our understanding, our comprehension. And then only we can see this, have this working. And today, with this, I want to start the next section. All these details about the postures I could not mention in my last talk. This practice is so, before I mention Dhatu Manasikara next one, I want to add one more very famous incident of being mindful of various minute movements that we make. You remember Venerable Ananda. Venerable Ananda had memorized entire Sutta Pitaka. He had only attained the stream entry. But when the Buddha passed away, at the moment of his passing away, one monk called Chunda, Subhadra, when he noticed many unenlightened monks mourning, weeping, grieving, shedding tears, Subhadra told them, don't cry, don't grieve, don't lament. This is a very good thing that happened, that this Gautama passed away, Buddha passed away. Because when he was alive, he was telling us, don't do this, don't do that, do this, speak like this, don't speak like that, and so forth. Always he was trying to discipline us. Now he is gone, we can do anything we like. We are totally free. So, Venerable Mahakassapa overheard this conversation and then decided this is the sort of things that can happen in future. And therefore, we must stop this. And soon after the Buddha passed away, within 3 months, with the help of Ajatasattu, King Ajatasattu, they decided to have a Buddhist council. So, the Mahakassapa selected 500 fully enlightened monks. He wanted to have the council of 500 fully enlightened monks. But he remembered they could not hold the council without Venerable Ananda. They cannot hold it with Ananda as also. They cannot hold it with him because he has not attained fully enlightenment. He was not an Arahant. He was just Sotapanna. Without him they cannot. With him they cannot. And without him they cannot hold the council because he is the one who holds the key to the sutras. That means who was the one who memorized all sutras. And therefore Venerable Mahakassapa and all other monks gave ultimatum to Venerable Ananda. And they said, Venerable Ananda, tomorrow we are going to hold the conference. Without you we cannot hold it. With you we cannot hold it. So you must try to attain full enlightenment before tomorrow. Venerable Ananda took this warning very seriously and he kept practicing the entire day, sitting, standing, walking without lying down, sitting, standing, walking, focusing his entire mind on every tiny little movement he made. Main postures and minor postures. First we said were Iriyapata and the second is clear comprehension. In between main postures there are some minor tiny little movements. So Venerable Ananda kept paying attention to those tiny little minor movements. And he kept paying attention to it. And then he has been very tired and he wanted to have a little rest. But his mind was fully preoccupied with this intention of seeing minor movements and attaining full enlightenment. Attaining full enlightenment. With this intention, with this seriousness, with this practice, he went to lie down. When he was lying down, as he was making effort to lie down, in between standing, lying down, he noticed these minor movements, minor postures. And then seeing these minor postures, minor movements, impermanence, 100% clearly, that moment he attained full enlightenment. The only one who attained full enlightenment at the 45-degree angle, so to say, not 90-degree angle. So, without touching his head, touching the head with his pillow with his head, he was so keen, his mind was so sharp, attention was so deep, mindfulness was so clear that he attained full, that he saw impermanence 100% clearly. At that moment he attained enlightenment. And therefore, friends, when we are very serious in the practice, we cannot live even one moment without using it. Every moment we let go is a losing moment. So we try to we have to use every moment for gaining something in meditation. And therefore, these minor moments also are extremely important. So clear comprehension, just like Venerable Ananda had, we also can develop this clear comprehension, and we can attain liberation, at least stream entry or once return and so forth, stages. Friends, as Buddha mentioned, I don't ask bhikkhus you to do anything that you cannot do. I ask you to do something that you can do. So he asks us to practice this meditation in this way, so that he knows very well that if we do it very seriously, with a clear comprehension, we can attain that state. So I wanted to mention this last time, but I didn't have time. I thought of completing the clear comprehension with this story of Venerable Ananda. I nearly forgot it in my last talk. So I think I don't have any more time for this morning, and I'm so happy that you all came to participate in this. And friends, let us conclude this morning session. We started our practice with metta,